Hi, I'm Femi OK. We start the stream with an appeal. This is Michael Dumford, the World Food Programme Regional Director for Eastern Africa.
The drought is ravaging the Horn of Africa. 13 million people across Ethiopia, Kenya and Somalia face severe hunger following 3 consecutive failed rainy seasons. Harvests are ruined, livestock are dying, and malnutrition rates are on the rise. This is the driest this region has been in 40 years. Before the situation deteriorates even further, it is vital that WFP and all the humanitarian actors in the region get the resources to scale up assistance and support vulnerable families. WFP's regional response plan builds on the lessons of previous droughts, recognizing the importance of early actions to ensure the recovery is sustained. To achieve it, WFP needs $327 million now to avert another major humanitarian catastrophe in the Horn of Africa.
Today on the stream, how do we manage those regular droughts that happen in the Horn of Africa? Joining our conversation, we have Esther, Nemo and Rania. It's a big conversation. I know that they have expertise. They will help us have it. Esther, welcome to the stream. Please introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them who you are, what you do.
I am Esther Ngumbi, an assistant professor of entomology and African American studies at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I'm also a food security expert, a senior fellow with the Aspen Institute New Voices. Thank you.
Oh, good to have you. Hello, Nemo. Welcome to the stream. Introduce yourself to our international audience.
Good evening, Femi. Thank you very much. My name is Nima Hassan. I am the director for Somalia NGO Consortium, a platform where NGOs, both international and local, are coordinated. Glad to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. And hello, Rania. Welcome to the stream. Nice to have you on board. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks very much, Femi. And hello, everyone. My name is Rania Degesh. I work for UNICEF in the regional office for Eastern Southern Africa.
Really good to have you. All right, so on YouTube, if you're on YouTube right now, watching right now, how many times has the stream talked about drought in the Horn of Africa, talked about drought, talk about possible solutions and workarounds? The comment section is right here. I don't need you to tell me how many times, I remember, but do you have comments? Do you have questions for our audience? I really, really appreciate you being part of today's show. Rania, let me start with you, but really this is the same question for all of our guests, which is, why are we still here with the technology, with our forecasting ability, with the amount of money that has been donated over the years? Why do we have now a drought in the Horn of Africa that, let me just look at the number here. This is just the World Food Programme. This is not what UNICEF is asking. This is what the World Food Programme is asking. $327 million. Why do we keep seeing this over and over again and we don't come up with better workarounds, better solutions, so we're not continually appealing to the region and to the world for money?
I think it's a great question, and it's a question I must say I asked myself when I started seeing the situation evolving since end of last year. Sadly, the Horn of Africa isn't a region that is unfamiliar with droughts. As you said, in the last 40 years, we've seen about 45 of them in varying scales. And I think we're really good now at predicting and doing the early warning that tells us that we have this coming, the rainfall shortages. We're relatively good at assessing who's at risk. But I think the third part, which is about response, we do extremely well for life-saving, but we don't underpin it as well with the resilience and the development narrative, because truly it's a development crisis. It's a water scarcity crisis. It isn't just the elements that you see today in the pictures that you've put up. These are just the symptoms. And so it's fundamentally a humanitarian and a development crisis intertwined. We deal with one extremely well, and the second, we have to address a bit more seriously.
We're very polished at asking for donations, but not very polished at developing regions so that they can actually be sustainable. This comment came in YouTube. I'm going to put this to you, Nemo. Please build off the back of it. The Horn is suffering reoccurring drought, and this finally leads to the extinction of rural areas and their livelihoods. Furthermore, it also weakens the economic stability of the eastern countries or the Horn of Africa countries. Nemo, are you seeing that in the work that you do on a daily basis?
Absolutely. I have to agree that is a very relevant comment, and it does impact on the overall life of the communities affected. It's not just about the life-saving activities, but as Rania said, I think it's really important that we get to the root causes of the problems, and that we are synergizing and developing to address those life-saving interventions, but also building the capacities of the local infrastructure, the capacities of the local communities, so that they are more resilient when droughts like this happened. Yeah. And I think it's really important that we are looking for locally led solutions and building those livelihoods so that communities can resist these changes. And it's not just the biggest problem now, I think, will be climate change. I think the impact of COVID-19 and things are getting far more serious. And it is really important that we address in a timely manner, but also ensure that we are doing serious development and resilience investment for those communities to be able to better support themselves when those droughts do come in.
So this all sounds good, and panel, I'm going to challenge you. No development speak, no capacities, no looking at capacities, etc. Because what does that really mean if you're a farmer living in Somalia, for instance? Let me just bring in Esther here. Esther, so we're looking for sustainable solutions. Have you seen them? Are you finding them? What do we need to be focusing on?
Thank you once again, and echoing my colleagues, if you're not hungry, if this data statistic does not move you, then I don't know. And probably you are done because you've heard this statistic over and over, year after year. And I grew up in Kenya. Actually, as a child, I saw my fellow Africans dying. Today, almost 40 years later, as a profession, as an expert, as a scientist, I see this. Why? And yet, I know, according to scientific evidence, we know what are the foundational ingredients to dealing with recurrent droughts. Do the communities have access to 365 days year-round water sources? We know these communities depend on agriculture. How can they farm when they don't have water? So for every dollar that's donated, every dollar that is asked for, why don't we put 50 cents into building that resilience, ensuring that these communities have access to water, that the livestock we are seeing that is dying can have a sustainable water source? Secondly, we know if it's not sustainable access to water, we can also ensure these communities are having crops that are drought tolerant. Where is research? Where is the research that has produced drought tolerant seeds that these communities can plant year in, year out? Secondly, why don't we have in those communities places where these community members can have access to food? Why do we? I think the solutions will come in. And again, first of all, anticipating. We know this is every February problem.
I'm just looking here at an article, how forgotten beans could help fight malnutrition in Africa. I'm wondering whether part of our looking for solutions has got to be in agriculture and farming in a different way. Nemo, come in here, and then Rania, you come off the back of it. Nemo, you start.
Definitely, I think for communities in Somalia who are agro-pastoralists, I think it's really important that they have more smart and innovative way of farming to those drought-resistant, definitely cereals. And I think it's really important that, what Rani has said before about the series of water management, I think it's really important that we are having serious investments into this. And the reason why you have a drought recurrent so much as well is that we are having short-term life-saving interventions and not following up with those innovations to ensure that communities are capacitated in terms of being able to give in the equipment, the support, the know-how, the expertise to be able to farm appropriately with those cereals, and ensure that we follow up. I think it's a whole holistic approach to addressing the situation. It's not just one sector. We need to ensure that we're having education to quality, so we're having access to quality education, we have the knowledge to be able to farm, and it's really important that we are talking to those local communities and ensuring they are part and parcel of the decision-making processes when we are developing and designing interventions, and definitely in the long run, that is what is essential.
Can I play you, Rania, a comment that Nissa Majid sent to us a little bit earlier, just a few hours earlier, and he was just thinking about not just the way that we think about maybe farming and agriculture, but also the way that we think about aid as well. This is what Nissa told us earlier. Please have a look, have a listen, and then respond immediately off the back of the video.
What we really need to see is for aid agencies, for government, for other actors to prioritise their humanitarian rationale above political considerations, and in particularly above an aversion to risk. And we're not seeing this to anywhere near the extent that's required. This is particularly the case in Somalia, where aid resources are very much focused on a handful of aid hubs of cities and towns, and there is a lack of effort and initiative to try and reach beyond these areas. And it's really important that organisations think beyond their normal ways of working.
Yeah, this one's for Rania.
If I can jump in.
Yeah, Nemo, you go first. This one's very difficult.
Ahead,
this is a difficult one for Rania. So Rania's like, yes, Nemo, you take it. You go ahead. All right. Nemo, go ahead. It's very difficult. I'm putting you all on the hot seat today because I am fed up talking about droughts. I want solutions. I want you experts to bring me solutions. All right, Nemo, you go first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I totally agree with that video. And I think we really need to, with conversations that we have on a regular basis, we're kind of challenging ourselves and saying, well, what are we doing wrong? In the Somalia context, after 30 years of protracted, there's conflict, there is insecurity. And with that, we've been having recurrent droughts. Actually, we've had the 2011 famine, we had the 2017, which actually people came, stakeholders came together to avert the catastrophe. But what we need to be doing is to ensure that we're having the longer term programming, that we are critically reviewing the strategies that we use at the moment. Like I said earlier, the focus here is
what does
usually
critically reviewing the strategies that we're using, what does that mean? Does that mean that we're not doing it effectively? Translate for me.
But the question is, we are here, like you said at the beginning of the program, we're still here 30 years on. We're still talking about drought in the Horn of Africa. And if we think about climate change, actually these countries have very limited, if not zero, contribution to the climate crisis. And I think they are bearing the brunt of the problem, and it will continue to do so. So I think it's really important that we take, as the international communities, we take the responsibilities, and we have the responsibility and obligations. Yes, we do address the situation. Yes, we do ensure that people are getting the life-saving interventions. But I think there's something has to be missing, and that is what we need to critically examine and review and ensure that we are addressing it properly, whether it's innovation, whether it's more resilient programs. And it really does need serious investment, especially if you want to build dams and ensure that these communities have access to water when rains fall. In Somalia, we have areas where we're having floods in one season, and then we're having dry spells on the other season. So there has to be something really that we could do as humanitarians and as the international community, and ensuring that we are talking to our local leadership, we're talking to the local communities, and we are building those conversations and ensuring that we're listening to those local solutions. Certainly.
Nemo, I agree with you. I think we are challenging ourselves, but where I slightly disagree is that we haven't moved forward. I actually think we have. Just by way of example, I think water and groundwater is one of the main issues that we all need to tackle. And groundwater extraction specifically, we know that 70 million children in the Horn of Africa live in areas that are extremely high water vulnerable. And so one of the things that certainly we have been toying with in UNICEF is our ability to extract that groundwater and to reduce the amount of water trucking we do in a crisis, but rather that we focus on the potential for water security, because that has a socioeconomic benefit. And I think the approaches and the innovation that we're toying and that we are, in fact, piloting in parts of the Horn will change the way that we're able to drill groundwater. And that gives us better access, prevents illness, and saves lives. But Femi, to your question, despite our collective frustration, I just don't think we can glide over the immediate life-saving need.
No, I
don't. That is in front of us.
And if you don't, I do agree with you, Rania. I hear that. But also, every time we make this appeal, people will say, but what happened the last time? How are we not building some resilience into it? I believe in the appeal, otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here now. But there has to be more. Otherwise, what we're doing is, they know that old adage of why buy somebody a fish? Why not teach them to fish? We're just buying a load of fish, right? No fishing rods in sight.
True. But also, what we are doing differently this time, and I must plug this in, I think,
Rania,
for the humanitarian world.
Okay.
No, true that, but I think there is still evolution. It's still a very deep crisis. But social protection networks, Nemo, if you allow me, I just want to flag that we do that differently today. Cash to families that are affected by drought wasn't something that we did 10 years, 20 years ago, but it is something that we are able to do and to build with governments and with communities, social protection networks that can enable us to transfer cash and help hold a pastoralist from selling the remaining 2 camels that they hold. So I really think there is potential, but what we need to do is to flag this dual-pronged approach and not just focus on the life-saving, much as it is needed. The resilience building and all our programs that go with that are necessary, but the funding that goes with that is necessary. And to me, we've relied on governments far too long. I think this is a call to every foundation out there, to every individual listening to us, to every person with ideas or thoughts in research and think tanks and centers, and also fundamentally to the private sector. We're all collectively in this and we can shift it.
Right.
So
there's one stakeholder. Now I'm talking development language. There's one section that we haven't spoken about. Esther, briefly, I know what you wanted you to go ahead and say, and then I'm going to put something on YouTube to you. Go ahead, Esther.
So first and foremost, I would like to challenge everyone who thinks that we've made effort. We've clearly not. And we're just coming off from COVID-19. In just a speck of a year, we got the vaccine. Why are we allowing everybody to keep on using this issue of drought? Or is it a money-making thing? We have to critically examine this. And I think calling on every African, everyone that cares, and after all, everyone is African, by the way, so everyone should feel the need. According to science, we all came off from Africa, so we're Africans. And it should trouble you if years and years we should allow this to happen. I think there's something that's wrong. Yes, year after year we keep on telling ourselves we should tackle both short-term but long-term. Clearly, I think we should take a step backward and see what is missing. And we should call everyone, including the experts who are right now solving issues. A lot of people with expertise from our countries are all over the world. can we come together and draw very concrete solutions? And then accountability, build that accountability. So to Femi asking, what happened? Last year we made the same call. What happened? What did we do to mitigate, to ensure that at least if that happens, we have some cushion of, and we can show that this is the resilience that was built in. We truly have to ask difficult questions.
So I'm going to, I'm just going to pause our conversation for a moment here, because there's somebody and there's a part of this puzzle that I haven't addressed, and our audience are actually saying this on YouTube. I hear you, I see you. This is Alan Ndritu. Food insecurity in the Horn of Africa is a politically motivated disaster. They so often that we have a leadership that is focused on an issue that could have solved the problem. It's deliberate negligence. That is Alan's thought, and lots of people are echoing this. What about the governments? What are governments doing? They know that there is climate change. I would say climate changed right now. Earlier we spoke to Mohammed. Mohammed had a really interesting take. Here he is.
We feel both the regional government and the federal government hasn't put up that much of a serious response, given the proportion of the extent of the impact of this drought. The other concern that we have would be is a concern for mismanagement of these resources. There has been efforts to raise funds and contributions from private businesses and other regions, and that's commendable.
You have to say, and also talk to governments as well, not just donors, not just the international community, say, please come help us, that there is a government conversation you have to have. I'm going to ask you, Esther, to talk about this one, because it's more difficult for Rania and for Nemo, who are in country, to be candid about what they need from governments. You can do it because you're not in country. Go ahead, Esther.
But I think that's very true. Governments, our country governments, need to act. I mean, they need, first of all, before even aid comes, they need to have their concrete, locally thought of, especially using actually expertise that is on the ground. And I'm sorry to say, yes, our country governments are failing us. And of course, we can see sometimes even that donor money when it comes, and there's a reason why we don't see change, because probably it's going to people's money. There's a lot of corruption in our countries. So the aid ends up not getting to the people that they need. And when it gets there, we do some kind of substandard job. Let's say if we're supposed to dig water wells, the government sources for contractors that are actually not doing the best. And so in 5 or even a year, that water well is not functioning. Why are we doing that to our own citizens? There's so much power if our governments would actually, first of all, put in place national measures. We don't have to wait for aid from the United Nations World Food Programme. Why don't we have local food banks that are stocked by the country government? There's a lot of budgets that go in. That should be number one.
Esther?
If your citizens are not healthy, then who? I think our governments have to do a lot.
Esther, I'm going to come back full
Esther,
circle,
and
Rani, I'm going to come back full circle to you, Rani. I'm coming back to you. I just want to show audience one more thing, because we have about 30 seconds left in the show. So I want you to just say, what are the immediate needs? Somalia, millions hungry with lives at risk. I just want to show you, give you an example, one of the countries in the Horn of Africa that is suffering right now. 70% of households do not have enough food to eat. 60% of households reported at least one person in their family has lost their source of income. And livestock are also threatened and at risk. Rania, the very last sentence in this conversation that we're having today, which is a really honest conversation, is what? What are the needs in region right now?
So from our perspective, Femi, we need about 120 million that goes into support of about 10 million children.
Okay.
And that's in nutrition, in water, in education, to your point, Nemo. And half of this is designed to go into the resilience programming I was referring to.
Rani, we have to leave it there. Thank you. This conversation is not over. More to come, but on another episode. Rania, Nemo, Esther, thank you for being part of the stream today. Appreciate you.
Thank you.